Welcome back. All right, so I want to talk about Tampa because they just win the Stanley Cup. It's the day after, and we got to look at next year. So with Cap Friendly telling us they're already over the cap, I want to discuss this because it's way easier for them to get under the cap this year coming up than for the year that we just finished. And the interesting part is we haven't had this complaint for a while, so let's bring this one back up. Most of the core guys in Tampa are signed for well below the value they would have got as UFAs. And Tampa Bay, of course, you don't pay the same taxes in Florida that you might pay in another state, or especially in Canada. There are a lot of advantages for Tampa. Those advantages also exist for Florida. And I mean the Florida Panthers. So there's one team that's really done well, and there's another one that we'll see, right? Although Barkov and Huberdeau are both on fantastic contracts for Florida. The thing that stands out with Kucherov to me isn't the 9.5 million. It's he would have made more. He took less, and Stamkos took way less at 8.5 million than what he would have made on the UFA market. I remember when he was going to unrestricted free agency and the amount of money that was being talked about, especially from Toronto, that they were willing to throw at him. Basically, the Tavares contract may be a little bit higher for Stamkos, and he chose to sign with Tampa for less money. It's the Boston model. Boston would be over the cap every year if guys actually wanted their market value, but they don't. That's why Pasternak's on a good contract. That's why Bergeron and Marchand are on good contracts, because they understand that in order to put a good team together, you can't ask for everything that you're worth like you would on the UFA market, or else you can't put a really good team together. Now, Braden Point at 6.75 million is criminally underpaid. That's the thing. Like, Point at 6.75 million, and he's an RFA next summer. So you'd have to think he's going to get a bit of a raise, but Stamkos is at 8.5. I don't think Point will go higher than Stamkos in his cap hit. Palat, 5.3 million. And then you get into the asterisks. Yanni Gourde at 5.16 million. I don't know that Gourde is on the team next year. I honestly think there may be some changes made. I don't know that Yanni Gourde is a guy that at 5.16 million they're going to want to keep there. Because right now they're at 85 million. The limit is 81.5 million. So they're not above. You can be 10% above during the offseason. It doesn't matter. Yanni Gourde may very well be a guy who is sacrificed for the good of the salary cap, right? And Tyler Johnson, last year they waived him multiple times. They were trying to move him out. They had to get rid of that $5 million. And then because Kucherov went on LTIR, they didn't have to. But they were definitely in a position where they were going to have to give up major assets to get rid of Johnson's contract, and that still may not have fixed it. Because Cirelli at 4.8 million. Now, Cirelli at 4.8 million, underpaid. Again, signs for less in Tampa than he likely would have gotten if he'd been offer sheeted. But Cirelli wanted to stay in Tampa. And Cirelli at 4.8 million, that money was available because Kucherov goes on LTIR, right? Now, Killorn I've got an asterisk next to because at 4.45 million, his might be the easiest of the three asterisks in the forward group to move from. And we've seen this before where Killorn is the most likely for Tampa to be able to trade in order to save themselves some cap space. The thing is, that's Gourde, Johnson, and Killorn. And as much as that's a huge part of that depth, that's also a trio of players that if they need to replace all three for less money, they could, because those three guys make about $15 million combined on your cap. So that would shave that money off. Now they're going to have to give up first rounders, prospects, that kind of thing in all likelihood if they want to get rid of all three, and it could cost them a lot from their future, but I don't think all three are going to go. So before anybody says they're not going to get rid of all three, I'm not saying they will, but I would think one of the three probably goes. Maroon at $900,000 for next year. The one-man dynasty, right? He's got 3 cup rings. And there aren't very many players over the last 30 years that can say, hey, I have 3 Stanley Cup rings. So that's not for nothing. Stevens, $737,500. The same cap hit as Joseph. And I would think Joseph would end up playing a more prominent everyday role for them next year, which he's already shown he's capable of. Now, the unrestricted free agents, remember, they're over the cap, so they can't sign these guys right now. Jamel Smith, who, if he wants to come back, it's like league minimum, would probably get that one done, right? Barclay Goodrow and Coleman, Blake Coleman likely have played their last games as members of the Tampa Bay Lightning. So now you're getting into some serious depth where you're getting Goudreau, Coleman are gone, probably Johnson, probably one of Gord or Killorn as well. But again, you look at some of the teams around the league, like Toronto with Spezza, Montreal with Perry. If you can get veterans to buy into what you're doing, and for Tampa, here's the thing: not only do they now have this tax benefit that you don't have to worry about paying the taxes on your money, which makes a big difference, but you also have the benefit of saying, hey, so we've won 2 Stanley Cups. We're looking to make it 3 in a row. Would you like to come in and sign up? Guys will play for less money for a chance at a Stanley Cup. So don't rule out that some guys are going to leave and other guys will sign with Tampa. And they'll come in and they'll probably come in for less money. Ross Colton's a restricted free agent. He's proven he deserves a spot in the full-time top 12. And Barry Boulay, I would think, has a roster spot locked up next year. He'll get the opportunity. I thought he played well enough in the duty that he did play, and so I would think he gets a regular spot next year. Now, I also, just for argument's sake, have got 2 other RFAs down here who have been on the verge of maybe getting called up and getting that chance, and Taylor Radish and Boris Kachuk. And these are, again, examples of how Tampa always has a lot of depth guys waiting to come up. And there's others. There's others I could have put on the board. Tampa, their development system is fantastic. So they develop these guys very well. They get them to sign for below market value on their contracts, which always makes people rage. And now I think they're going to be able to get themselves under the cap. So I want to go over to the blue line after mentioning $51.841 million is the amount of money right now tied up in their forward group. And I do think they probably figured a way to get Tyler Johnson off to Seattle, but he may not be the only contract that would go to Seattle. And again, Seattle should and rightfully likely will ask for a lot in order to take some contracts off Tampa's hands. But we've seen this before. When Vancouver takes JT Miller, it helps Tampa get under the cap. And JT Miller's been great for Vancouver, but teams are always lined up and willing to take on some of these guys from Tampa when they become available. That's just the way that works out. On the blue line, Victor Hedman only costs them $7.875 million in cap space. That is so ridiculously. You look at some of the defensemen around the league and what they make, and the fact that Hedman is less than $8 million in a cap hit, that is insane. And so that is one of the biggest bargains in the National Hockey League. Easily one of the biggest bargains in the league. Now, McDonough I have an asterisk next to, and I'll say why. $6.75 million played absolutely great for them during the postseason, but at 32 years of age, a $6.75 million cap hit, they've just won their second straight Stanley Cup. I could see a situation where McDonough's $6.75 million cap hit gets traded. Because if you think about it, or that Seattle would end up taking McDonough. Now, it is impossible to replace McDonough. Absolutely. Ranger fans will attest to that. He is very difficult to replace on the blue line. But if they find a way to get both Johnson and McDonough off to Seattle, and you throw in whatever you have to make that work, that's $11.75 million. Now, why does Seattle make that move? Because we've seen what McDonough can do in the playoffs. McDonough would immediately bring credibility to that blue line in Seattle. And Johnson, I thought played better in the postseason than he did in the regular season. He would have a bounce back in Seattle. I don't think it would be a JT Miller level bounce back like what we saw in Vancouver from Miller, but I do think Johnson's totals would bounce back. But again, if that happens, people will definitely have some issues with that. Sergachev at $4.8 million. He signed in Tampa for what I think is below market value for what Sergachev brings to the lineup. Chernak at $2.95 million. If Tampa Bay in the expansion draft says, all right, we're going to protect Hedman, McDonough, and Sergachev, Chernak's gone. Chernak at $2.95 million. If I'm Ron Francis, this can take a lot to tell me not to take Eric Chernak at a $2.95 million cap hit. Absolutely. Same reason as McDonough. Immediately puts credibility on that blue line. Jan Ruda, $1.3 million. I thought he played well enough during the playoffs. And then Savard, who was a hired gun. And this is where the whole cap argument comes in. Savard, they were able to bring him in, absolutely, because they had LTIR money that they could use. Savard, he's got his cup ring. He moves on. I can't see Savard ending up coming back unless he signs for below market value, which guys tend to do in Tampa. Luke Shen, UFA, if he wants to come back, I would think that they figured a way to make it happen. probably for $750,000. Shen, it gets himself a couple of Stanley Cup rings, probably pretty happy about that. And Cal Foote is an RFA. I would think he probably gets a regular spot in their lineup next year. So that blue line, while it's going to be weakened if they lose Savard and if one of McDonough or Chernak were gone, that definitely weakens the blue line. They're still pretty good. You've still got Hedman, you've got Sergachev, you've got either McDonough or Chernak, you've still got Ruda. You're going to end up with Cal Foote in your lineup, and they're probably, if they make the right moves, they're probably going to be able to pick somebody up on the free agent market. Goaltending's going to be interesting. Goaltending, of course, their defense costs them $23.675 million currently under the cap. Their goaltending situation, Vasilevsky, $9.5 million. You want a goaltender who might arguably be worth $12 million? It's probably Vasilevsky. The interesting thing for me with Andrei Vasilevsky is because he plays in Tampa, he's underrated. And it's the Chris Osgood syndrome, where you have a goaltender putting up really good numbers and immediately people go, but look at the team he's playing with. And so I think there's some of that with Vasilevsky, not as strong as it was with Osgood. It was ridiculous. Osgood could play lights out an entire playoffs. People would go, yeah, but they have Yzerman. Is he a goaltender? No? All right. So their other two goaltenders, McElhinney and Gibson, are both UFAs. I don't think they bring back McElhinney, and I don't think Gibson's going to be the guy. The one complaint I had with Tampa Bay was they didn't really have a goaltender who could spell Vasilevsky if he got tired, if he needed a night off. And an 82-game schedule, you need that. So I would think that Tampa Bay probably brings somebody in for the backup job, and we'll see how that works out. Now, the interesting part is they have two other goalies that are signed to contracts, probably don't play for them yet, in Hugo Alnefelt, who's a highly thought-of prospect, and Amir Miftakov, who, again, young prospects in net. So we'll see what they do with their goaltending, but currently, with Vasilevsky as the only signed goaltender for next season, that's $9.5 million in cap space spent on their goaltending. So I would expect the argument next year, there will still be those that complain about how far over the cap they were this year, but the argument next year is going to go back to what it was before. Guys are signing in Tampa for less money than they would make on the market because they want to win, and I would think the taxes play a small role. I don't think they play as big of a role as we as fans think, but I would think it's part of it. Where if it's $500,000 difference between playing for one team or another, but you're not going to pay the same amount of taxes on the one that's offering you less money. You might see those offers as being equal, that kind of thing. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Andre Palat's the other one too. I thought about putting an asterisk next to because it's possible that Palat could end up being the guy to go. I would think that one forward, one defenseman ends up being gone for next year, and then they build themselves up as a contender. They're going to contend. They have an excellent core. They're experienced. They've won twice. They're hearing all the same complaints as everybody else. They're hearing all the complaints about, well, they only won it because they're over the cap. So that just gives them more fuel for next year. Much like part of what I think fueled them this year was that they won the cup last year and they didn't really have the same level of celebration that they get this year because of the bubble playoffs from last year. I really think that drove them through most of this season and definitely in the playoffs. But we'll see. They'll be controversial no matter what happens because either there's going to be complaints about them being over the cap or there's going to be complaints about people signing for less money than they'd get on the market. Which, I mean, I get it. But if a guy signs for less money, it's sort of like LeBanc when he signed that $1 million deal in San Jose, and I saw people saying, this is cap circumvention. It's not. If a player sits down and goes, look, you guys can't afford to offer me big money. I like it here. Give me $1 million, I'll stick around. It's not circumvention. It's a player making a deal with the club, and there's been plenty of that in Tampa. I would expect that to continue. But they've put together an excellent team. It's an excellent program, and a lot of these players get developed from within, which is remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. The Tampa Bay Lightning remind me a lot of how the Detroit Red Wings built themselves up in the late 90s, early 2000s. There was a lot of building from within and adding the right veterans up front and the right veterans on the blue line at the right time, and then championships would follow. But there you go. For Tampa to officially be a dynasty, if they win one cup in the next 2 years, they don't have to win it next year, but 3 cups in 4 years is officially a dynasty in the NHL. Can they do it? I think they can. but we'll see. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.